today, what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to go through and start talking about integers. All right, integers. Now, before we get started today, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to have you guys come up with examples of integers, and you're going to type it in the chat room here in a minute, and I'm going to record what you get. All right, so go ahead and okay, so if you take a look at this right here, these are some of the examples that were given by you guys. So we had somebody say 4, -5, 1, 5, 8, 97, -2, 21, 1/2, 3, -3, 2048, 4.5, and 5. Unfortunately, there are 2 on here that do not belong. Okay, there's 2 that are like each other that do not belong in this set of integers. And those 2 are this one, 1/2, and 4.5. Because guess what? Here is what an integer, the definition of an integer is. The definition of an integer is a whole number and its opposite. That is what an integer is. It's a whole number and its opposite. So let's talk about opposites really quickly. Here is an example of an opposite. So if I'm at 0 and I go to +3, because 3 is my favorite number, all right, the opposite of 3. Well, we know that 3 is 3 units away from 0. So if I went 3 units, and I call this going into the dark side because it's negatives, the number that's 3 units away from, if I go 3 units in the other direction, I land on -3. So -3 and +3 are called opposites, okay? Because they're on different sides of the number line, but they're both the same distance away from 0, okay? So that's what we're getting into. So we're on page 1. Oh, my bad, not 143. Hey, that's what our assignment's on today. We're on page 135. So turn your books to page 135, okay? All right, so that is what we are talking about today is integers, and we're actually going to be working with how to find the sum of integers today. So let's really quick take a look. This is just a different example of how to think about integers. So this is a problem, and I guess it's real life. My second period class and I talked about it today, and they said that they do this in hockey too and basketball. So if you've ever played a team sport and wonder how you impacted the game, basketball has a statistic used to measure called the plus minus. So basically what it is if to find out how good you do or how you impact the game, you find the player's plus minus. So what it means is this, okay? The plus is how many points. So let's say you're in the game. All right, so if you're playing in the game, okay, the plus would be how many points your team scores while you're in the game. So that's the plus. The minus is how many points your opponent scores while you're in the game. All right, so that's why it's called a plus minus. So example, all right, and you're going to write this on your papers right now. Let's say that you're in the game. Coach calls you, you're like, oh yeah, woohoo, I'm in the game. Well, you're in the game for 4 minutes. In that 4-minute period of time, your team scores 10 points. Okay? So during that 4 minutes of time, your opponent scores, oh, sorry, this should be team. All right, your opponent scores 8 points. Okay, so to find out if you have a positive plus minus score or a negative, you know that this is a positive 10 because that's how much your team scored while you were there, but your opponent scored 8 points, so that's a negative 8. So if you were to add these together, your answer would come out to be 2. So therefore, you had a positive impact when you were out on the court. Well, so the next time through, somebody substitutes in for you, and then the coach looks down and says, hey, you're in. Now you're in for 2 minutes. And during that 2 minutes, your team scored 4 points, but the opponent scored 8 points. All right, so this would be a +4 that you got, but your opponent scored 8 points, so that's a -8. If you add these together, oh, so that's a minus. So your opponents outscored you guys while you were in there. So it's just a way of looking at how integers work. All right. Okay, so moving forward, because we're going to go kind of fast through this, turn to page 137, and we're going to talk about video games for a quick second. Okay, so Neva plays a video game. Okay, on her first round, she earns 3 points. So what that is that means she gained 3 points. So that's +3. Okay. She plays that video game again a second round, and unfortunately this time she loses 3 points. Okay. So after the first round, she's up 3 points. Her second round, she loses 3 points. Well, let's talk about this for a quick second, because if you look at these, all right, each set of these, they're called 0 pairs. So this right here is called a 0 pair. And the reason why it's called a 0 pair, because if you think about it, here's your number line. We started at 0. We had no points. After the first round, she gained 1 point. But then the second round, she lost 1 point, which is a -1. Well, 1 plus -1 gets back to 0. So they basically canceled each other out. All right, same with this one. 1 point, 0 point, or -1 point, 0. 1 point, -1. They zero out. They're called 0 pairs. Okay, so if you look at this, the expression that we could actually write from this would be 3 plus -3. Well, these are called additive inverses. They're basically opposites of each other. And if we were to draw this on a number line, up to 3, and then this is -3, guess what? We're back to 0. Okay, now I have a quirky, weird way of helping you guys remember this, but I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to do it just because it's not good. All right. The other way that you could think about it is that this is a positive atom and a negative atom. So they attract each other and then they go off. They cancel each out. Okay. So if you got atoms floating around everywhere, all of a sudden it will find its opposite and be gone. Okay. Same with this one. So that's another way to think about it. All right. So the first step that we're going to do here in this problem is that they want us to circle our 0 pairs. So we're going to circle these, and we're going to circle these, and we're going to circle these, because those are all considered 0 pairs. Okay. All right. So how many points does Neva have after her second round? Well, these are all 0 pairs. So they're all gone. So she has 0 points. So therefore, what we learn is that 3 plus -3 is 0. Okay. Well, let's look. She starts and she plays this game again. Neva starts the game over. The integer chips below represent the number of points she has after her first turn. So it looks like she ends up having -5 points. So she must have lost 5 points. But then her second round, she earned 5 points. So she earned 5 points. Okay, so there, that's showing her earning 5 points. Okay, so A, how many points does Neva have after her first turn? She has -5, right? Because this was after her first turn. Then we already drew in the positive 5 points that she gained after her first or second turn. And we're now going to circle our 0 pairs. So these are all considered 0 pairs because there's one of each. And so basically they cancel out. Well, if you look at this, this cancels, this cancels, this cancels, this cancels, this cancels. They're all gone. So she has 0 points after her second round. So basically what that means is that -5 plus 5 is 0. -5 plus 5 is 0. And we just talked about that too, because when you're on a number line, okay, on a number line, if you go up 5 units and then you add -5 units, it goes back to 0. All right. So moving on. Okay, let's take a look at on page 138. There's nothing to write. You just get to watch. So we know this tells us that 5 and -5 are opposites. Okay, and then this right here shows us how when you add opposites together, it adds up to 0. Okay, all right, so if you think about it, okay, give an example of 2 integers that make up 0 pairs. Well, we could go hog wild crazy. We could go 200 plus a -200. Those are 0 pairs. We could go -50 plus +50. Those are zeros because those are opposites. You could go -1000 plus +1000. That's 0. So those are all examples of 0 pairs. Now I know, like I said, I'm going through this really quickly. I promise I'll post this on Google Classroom as well as post the video. Okay, now flip to the page of 140. All right, so if you look at page 140, here's what this says. Andrew plays a card game. In the first round, he gets 4 points. In the second round, he loses 4 points. The expression 4 plus -4 represents his score after 2 rounds. Okay, so first step, let's circle all of the 0 pairs in this model. So there's a 0 pair. There's a 0 pair, because 0 pairs basically mean they're canceling out. So how many points does Andrew have after the second round? He doesn't have any. There's nothing left here, and there's no positives left and no negatives left. They're all gone. So therefore, 4 plus -4 is 0. Okay. All right. So take a look at this. Kira plays a card game with Andrew. The integer chips below represent the number of points she has after the first round. So she has -7 after the first round. But then she earns 7 points in the second round. So earn, that's a key word. Earn means positive. So that means she's gaining 7 points. So now that we have that, we're going to circle our 0 pairs and see how many of these cancel out. And what do you know? All of them cancel out. So how many points does she have? She has 0 points after the second round because -7 plus 7 is 0. Okay? All right, just a couple more examples and I'm going to cut you loose, because it would be awesome if all we dealt with were opposites and additive inverses that basically add up to 0. But that's not accurate for integers. Okay? All right. All right, so let's take a look at this first example problem. On the first play, Angels football team gains, keyword right here. Whenever you see the word gains, that is a positive. Gains 5 yards from their starting position. On the second play, the team loses 7 yards. So that is a negative, right? So look for key words. So to find where the team is relative to a starting position, add 5 and -7. So we're going to use integer chips. Well, these are integer chips, but they're just in the book. These are integer chips right here. So first step, we're going to go through and we're going to add all of the 0 pairs together. All right? Because what happens is all of those basically cancel each other out. Okay? So now if you look at B, what is the value of the remaining chips? Well, we have 2 of these left, and they're both negative. So we have -2 chips left over. So that must mean that 5 plus -7 is a -2. So the question asks, after the second play, where's Angels team relative to its starting point? They have a loss of 2 yards. So they are 2 yards from the line of scrimmage. I think that's what it's called. All right, so, okay, yeah, and I know I'm busting to move through this stuff, so I will always, what I'll do as soon as I'm done with this, I will go back and answer questions through my other computer, okay? Now, to model it a different way, we can use a number line. So we're going to start at 0, right? And we're going to go up to +5. We're going to go up to +5 because they first gained 5 yards. So that's +5. But then the second time, the quarterback must have got sacked because they ended up losing 7. Now look at this. From here to here, remember, is 5 yards because they are opposites and opposites have a sum of 0. But then we went 2 more yards down because this has to have a total of -7 yards. Okay. All right. So therefore, my number line ended at -2. So yet again, 5 plus -7 is a -2. Okay. All right. Last page that I want to take a look at. Okay, look at this. The football team loses 5 yards on the first from where they started. Okay, then, oh my goodness, they're struggling because then they lost another 2 yards. So this model right here shows -5 and -2. The first question that I'm asking you is this: are there any 0 pairs to cancel out? No, there's not, because they lost yards. Both possessions, they lost yards, so they're both negative. So when you have all of the same kind like this, you're going to just add them all together because nothing cancels each other out. So the value of the chips is a total of -7. So we are 7 yards behind the starting point. Okay, that's what that means. Now, if we look at this on a number line, so from 0 to -5, that's my first step right there. Now I'm adding 2 more negatives, so I continue into the dark side. Anytime I go into the negatives, I think of it as being in the dark side. So I'm going to go down 2 more units, and I land right here. So -5 plus -2 is a -7. Okay. All right. Number 5, how is finding the sum of 2 plus -3 using integer chips to finding the sum of 2 plus -3 on a number line? Well, if you think about using an integer chips, this is what this problem would look like if we were using the integer chips. Then we would cancel out our 0 pairs, right? Leaving us with just this left over. Well, that's like using a number line because watch, if I start at 0 and I go up to 2, then I add -3, watch this. Right here, that's -2 right there. But I have to go 1 more because I have a total of -3 here. So I basically cancel that part out, and whatever I have left over, I have to continue. Okay, so that's how they're kind of like each other, because basically I can't get back to 0 by canceling those out, just like I did my 0 pairs. And then whatever I have left over is what my answer is going to be. All right, so if you look at this final problem, a football team loses 6 yards on their first play and then gains 8 yards on the next play. Use a model to find -6 plus 8. Well, you have 2 choices, people. -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my 6 negative chips. Then I'm adding to it +8. Okay, all right, so ready? Here's what happens. These are my 0 pairs. They cancel out. Gone, 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 gone. Leaving me with these left over. So my answer is 2. Okay, we'll come back to what it means in a minute. If I was doing this on a number line, okay, I would start at 0 and I'd go up to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But then I add a -8 from this point. So here's my -6 right to here, right? Because those are going to cancel out. And then what's left over, I still have 2 more to go because these have to have a sum of 8, right? So my answer, oh, how about I do that correctly? Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Ignore this, doing the wrong problem. So it starts at 0 and goes down to -6. There we go. Now we add 8. So that means from here to here is 6, right? Because they cancel out. Plus I have 2 left over. So this is a total of 6 right here. That cancels out to 0. And then I have a 2 left over after that. So my answer is still 2. So basically what that 2 means is that they have gained 2 yards.
Ms. Parkin, I have a question.